All right. Chapter 2. Alicia is my name. At the time of this story, I was 18 years old. Gad had recruited me for the movement and brought me to Palestine. He had made me into a terrorist. I had met Gad in Paris, where I went straight from Buchenwald immediately after the war. When the Americans liberated Buchenwald, they offered to send me home, but I rejected the offer. I didn't want to relive my childhood, to see our house in foreign hands. I knew that my parents were dead and my native town was occupied by the Russians. What was the use of going back? No thanks, I said. I didn't want to go home. Then where do you want to go? I said I didn't know. It really didn't matter. After staying on for 5 weeks in Buchenwald, I was put aboard a train for Paris. France had offered me asylum, and as soon as I reached Paris, a rescue committee sent me for a month to a youth camp in Normandy. When I came back from Normandy, the same organization got me a furnished room on the Rue de Moreau, I don't know how to say that, and gave me a grant which covered my living expenses and the cost of the French lessons, which I took every day of the week except Saturday and Sunday from a gentleman with a mustache whose name I have forgotten. I wanted to master the language sufficiently to sign up for a philosophy course at the Sorbonne. The study of philosophy attracted me because I wanted to understand the meaning of the events of which I had been victim. In the concentration camp, I had cried out in sorrow and anger against God and also against man, who seemed to have inherited only the cruelty of his creator. I was anxious to reevaluate my revolt in an atmosphere of detachment, to view it in terms of the present. So many questions obsess me. Where is God to be found? In suffering or in rebellion? When is a man most truly a man? When he submits or when he refuses? Where does suffering lead him? To purification or to bestiality? Philosophy, I hoped, would give me an answer. It would free me from my memories, my doubts, my feelings of guilt. It would drive them away, or at least bring them out in concrete form and into the light of day. My purpose was to enroll at the Sorbonne and devote myself to this endeavor. But I did nothing of the sort, and Gad was the one who caused me to abandon my original aim. If today I am only a question mark, he is responsible. One evening there was a knock at my door. I went to open it, wondering who it could be. I had no friends or acquaintances in Paris and spent most of my time in my room, reading a book or sitting with my hand over my eyes, thinking about the past. I would like to talk with you. The man who stood in the doorway was young, tall, and slender. Wearing a raincoat, he had the appearance of a detective or an adventurer. Come in, I said after he had already entered. He didn't take off his coat. Silently, he walked over to the table, picked up the few books that were there, riffled their pages, and then put them down. Then he turned to me. I know who you are, he said. I know everything about you. His face was tanned, expressive. His hair was unruly, one strand perpetually on his forehead. His mouth was hard, almost cruel, thus accentuating the kindness, the intensity, and warm intelligence in his eyes. You are more fortunate than I, for I know very little about myself. A smile came to his lips. I didn't come to talk about your past. The future, I answered, is of limited interest to me. He continued to smile. The future, he asked, are you attached to it? I felt uneasy. I didn't understand him. The meaning of his questions escaped me. Something in him set me on edge. Perhaps it was the advantage of his superior knowledge, for he knew who I was, although I didn't even know his name. He looked at me with such familiarity, such expectation, that for a moment I thought he had mistaken me for someone else, that it wasn't me he had come to see. Who are you? I asked. What do you want with me? I am Gad, he said in a resonant voice, as if he were uttering some Kabbalistic sentence which contained an answer to every question. He said, I am Gad, in the same way that Jehovah said, I am that I am. Very good, I said with mingled curiosity and fear. Your name is Gad. Happy to know you. And now you've introduced yourself, may I ask the purpose of your call? What do you want of me? His piercing eyes seemed to look straight through me. After several moments of this penetrating stare, he said in a quite matter-of-fact way, I want you to give me your future. Having been brought up in the Hasidic tradition, I had heard strange stories about the Mashula, the mysterious messenger of fate to whom nothing is impossible. His voice is such as to make a man tremble, for the message it brings is more powerful than either the bearer or the recipient. His every word seems to come from the absolute, the infinite, and its significance is at the same time fearful and fascinating. Gad is a Meshula, I said to myself. It was not his physical appearance that gave me this impression, but rather what he said and the way he said it. Who are you? I asked again in terror. Something told me that at the end of the road we were to travel together, I should find another man, very much like myself, whom I should hate. I am a messenger, he said. I felt myself grow pale. My premonition was correct. He was a messenger, a man sent by fate to whom I could refuse nothing. I must sacrifice everything to him, even hope if he asked it. You want my future? I asked. What will you do with it? He smiled again, but in a cold, distant manner, as one who possesses a power over men. I'll make it into an outcry, he said, and there was such a strange light in his dark eyes. An outcry first of despair, then of hope, and then finally a shout of triumph. I sat down on my bed, offering him the only chair in the room, but he remained standing. In the Hasidic legends, the messenger is always portrayed standing, as if his body must at all times serve as a connecting link between heaven and earth. Standing thus, in a trench coat which seemed as if it had never been taken off and were an integral part of his body, with his head inclined towards his right shoulder and a fiery expression in his eyes, he proceeded to tell me about the movement. He smoked incessantly, but even when he paused to light a cigarette, he continued to stare obliquely at me and never stopped talking. He talked until dawn, and I listened with my eyes and my mind wide open. Just so I had listened as a child to the grizzled master who revealed to me the mysterious universe of the Kabbalah, where every idea is a story, and every story, everyone concerned with the life of a ghost, is a spark from eternity. That night, Gad told me about Palestine and the age-old Jewish dream of recreating an independent homeland where every human act would be free. He told me of the movement's desperate struggle with the English. The English government has sent 100,000 soldiers to maintain so-called order. We of the movement are no more than 100 strong, but we strike fear into their hearts. Do you understand what I'm saying? We cause the English, yes, the English, to tremble. The sparks in his dark eyes lit up in the fear of 100,000 uniformed men. This was the first story I had ever heard in which the Jews were not the ones to be afraid. Until this moment, I had believed that the mission of the Jews was to represent the trembling of history rather than the wind which made it tremble. The paratroopers, the police dogs, the tanks, the planes, the Tommy guns, the executioners, they are all afraid. The Holy Land has become for them a land of fear. They don't dare walk out on the streets at night or look at a young girl in the eye for fear that she may shoot them in the belly, or stroke the head of a child for fear that he may throw a hand grenade in their face. They dare neither to speak nor to be silent. They are afraid. Hour after hour, Gad spoke to me in the blue nights of Palestine of their calm and serene beauty. You walk out in the evening with a woman, you tell her that she is beautiful, and you love her, and the 20 centuries hear what you are saying. But for the English, the night holds no beauty. For them, every night opens and shuts like a tomb. Every night, a dozen soldiers are swallowed up by the darkness and never seen again. Then Gad told me the part he expected me to play. I was to give up everything and go with him to join the struggle. The movement needed fresh recruits and reinforcements. It needed young men who were willing to offer it their futures. The sum of their futures would be the freedom of Israel, the future of Palestine.